Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome. So, mega projects. How do we define these? What do these mean for Sri Lanka? Just at the outset, we have a fairly loose definition here in Sri Lanka of what we mean by mega projects, but I think we are largely referring to the opportunities surrounding what's happening in the Western Region Megapolis and its development. We are referring to what's happening in the south, and there is new news and movement on the Hambantota port and its associated industrial zone. We've also heard talk about Trincomalee and a potential industrial zone there. So we are bringing in China, we are bringing in potentially India, and I think as a scope for this discussion, this is what we're talking about. We are talking about these very large projects around which Sri Lanka previously has no experience or potentially haven't explored opportunities. And we've got, I think, a panel here that reflects potentially what the future is for these projects. I'm not going to do long introductions because you have a fantastic faculty book that outlines the experience of each of these gentlemen and lady. On my extreme right here is Mr. Hang Tan, Deputy General Manager from China Merchant Port Holdings. This is Nadija from John Keel's Holdings. Mr. Lakshman Jayasekara is a bureaucrat. He's a panelist, and he's from the Ministry of Megapolis and Western Province Development. Dr. Xu is a senior member of a Chinese think tank and also has consulted extensively on some of China's largest mega projects, if you can call. I mean, Shenzhen, what's happened at the Shenzhen economic zone has been, the transformation there has been fantastic, and he's had a frontline seat for that. And Sanjay is, I suppose, can be a reflection of what India's role here can be in the future. He's from the largest diversified group of companies in India. It's not an Indian company anymore. It's a company with a fairly global footprint, and lovely to have you here, Sanjay. So in terms of a few quick notes on how the session will go forward, we would love for you to participate and make this as interactive as possible. I think you know how you can potentially reach out, post your questions on the app, and I encourage you to do so from the outset. We have also a request from the organizers. There is a questionnaire on your table. They would like to see if you would like to just quickly fill this out in the next few minutes. They'd like to see if they can collect these at lunchtime. So that pretty much wraps up the announcements. And I think let's get on to the session. We have 3 speakers and 2 panelists. Looking forward to a vibrant discussion, ladies and gentlemen. So without further ado, may I invite you, Mr. Hang Tan, for the first speech.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is my pleasure and a privilege to be invited by Ceylon Chamber of Commerce to share a few words on how to capitalize and attract on mega projects from perspective of a foreign investors. My name is Hang Tan from China Merchants Port, a leading global port investor, developer, and operator within 29 ports in 15 countries across the globe. We are the 2nd largest container operator in the world in terms of total annual container volumes as of 2016, and expect to handle 100 million TEUs this year. Although some of you might not be familiar with China Merchants Port, but you might have heard of Colombo International Container Terminal. It's China Merchants' first first greenfield terminal investment in Sri Lanka through an international tender in 2009, and it is the only deep-water terminal in the region that can accommodate the ultra-large container vessels. Leveraging on the global network of China Merchants Port and the expertise of a leading international port operator, CICT hit 2 million TEUs of throughput in last year, only 2 years after it officially commenced its operation in late 2014. If I'm not mistaken, CICT remains to date the single largest foreign direct investment into Sri Lanka, creating about 1,400 jobs, with only 20 expats from China posting among them. Its addition and the resulting speedy business development has shot the Port of Colombo up the international ranking ladder from 36th in 2012 to 23rd in 2016. It is also the only green terminal in the region relying solely on electricity instead of fossil energy to support its daily operation. CICT actually set up a new benchmark in terms of port efficiency and quality standard. CICT won award of the best container terminal in Asia under 4 million TEUs, which is a great recognition and a great honor in the industry. CICT also strives to be a responsible and a respectable domestic enterprise by fully complying with the legal and the regulatory framework of Sri Lanka. Moreover, Sri Lankan talent is put in our international talent pool to work in different countries under China Merchants umbrella. It has remained keen on helping those in need, with a CSR footprint covering various aspects, including disaster relief, vocational training, cataract surgery, and so on. From day one, we have been investing in this country. China Merchants Group, the parent company of the CM Port, was founded in 1872. In fact, it celebrates its 145th anniversary this year. China Merchants Group pioneered the reform and opening up of China through its investment and development of Circle Industry Zone in 1979. Circle was the first and the only window that China opened to the world back then. So where is Circle? What does it look like? Circle is located in southern of China. The Circle's name represents a snake mouth or snake pit. So you can imagine how tiny it is. But the location is just opposite Hong Kong. We take ferry about 40 minutes and by road to Hong Kong Central. So in 1978, we were lucky to have a picture at that time. This is Circle, a fishing village, remote, poor, with only 3,000 people, 3 fishermen, and was an area smuggling peoples to Hong Kong for better life. But today, this is Circle. 38 years later, this place becoming the most vibrant, most richest, most comprehensive city, which is a kind of every people would like to dreaming for. I could say most livable city. So let's go back to China Merchants. China Merchants is synonymous with the mega projects. We actually built and developed the Circle over 38 years into the urban metropolis you see today, known as the most modern, innovative, and livable city in China. More importantly, by leveraging on from Circle's huge commercial success, the group continues to be a leading, diversified conglomerate. Its portfolio covers 3 core business sectors, including in transportations and related infrastructure. China Merchants Port is under this umbrella, and we have our own, the biggest energy shipping company, and a toll road, and dock and ship repairing. And also we have another important sector is finance. We have China Merchants Bank, which is the fifth largest bank in China, the best retailer bank in the world. And we have our own security, China Merchants Security, China Merchants Fund, China Merchants Assets Management Company. And also, most importantly, which is our major sector, which we call the city and zone developing sector. It has over $1 trillion in assets under China Merchants Group's management, and reported a total profit of over $16 billion last year. Needless to say, the transformation, a remote, a fishing village with less than 3,000 poor fishermen into a modern city with over 300,000 people contributing over $52,000 in GDP per capita would indeed qualify as a mega project. Actually, I quite agree with moderators' definitions. What is a mega project? So let's look at what have been evolved from Circle in last 38 years. So from the port, actually, we used to be a small port servicing in limited demand, evolved into a major container gateway terminal in southern China, which contributing over 10 million TEUs annually. In terms of zone, what used to be an industry zone with a labor-intensive factory evolved into a free trade zone, abounded with high-end business clusters like financial services, trade and logistics, high-tech and creative industries, and a mega health industry, and so on. If you look at the city today, what used to be a 2.7 square kilometers industry zone evolved into a city with 23 square kilometers of land, over 300,000 people, and many shining international brands incubated in this place. So probably you are not familiar with those China Merchants Bank, CMIC, which is the biggest container manufacturing in the world, but you may very familiar with Huawei. Huawei was incubated from Circle. I'm sure these facts would help you understand the benefits that mega projects would bring to the location, to the people, and to the country. Circle success is attributed to a unique port zone city development model, which was formulated by China Merchants and optimized throughout 38 years of its practice. It has not only successfully duplicated in China, but has also been constructively implemented overseas. China Merchants is not only a fortune maker, or a city builder, but also a spiritual tutor of inspiration to the younger generation. Time's money, efficiency is life, has been a major legacy of China merchants to the China Merchants Group itself, to the city, and to the nation. Talking about mega projects, it is important to emphasize their contribution to economic development and growth. And by leveraging on execution of such project, you'll have opportunity to embrace international capital, the latest technology, new business models, and new management standards, thus shortening your the learning curve and facilitating integration with the global markets. More importantly, of course, change the mindset while you connect to the world. We know that Sri Lanka is pursuing an economic growth target by realizing its fundamental industrialization and urbanization. It is positioning its regional hub, logistics hub, by leveraging on its strategic location and advancing transportation and port infrastructure implementations. Economic growth is driven by investment, trade, and consumption. Relying on government investment with heavy sovereign debt may bring you short-term growth. Whether it is sustainable in the long run remains still questionable to me. Therefore, how to attract and stimulate foreign investment and investment from the private sector should be the next questions for a decision maker. From the perspective of an investor, especially a foreigner, a few things must be very crystal clear. First one, what development model would you prefer? Market economy or commander economy? SOE dominance or market orientation? Secondly, are you expecting more FDI and private investment? If yes, how can you build up an investor-friendly, merchants-friendly environment to attract more investment, both in software and hardware, and soft power and hard power? Location is key, but it is everything. Is it everything? The answer could be very obvious. Some fundamentals for booming growth in the developing economy may need to be taken into considerations. First, willingness to change to suit global economic trends and changes. A clear and a practical development strategy ensuring that it is concentrated and consistent. Political stability to ensure long-term investment and development. More efficient government and a transparent administration that are necessary to dispel any doubt and uncertainty of the public and the investor. Sound and developed legislatives to safeguard the long-term benefits of the investors. Suitable industry policy, such as positive list or a negative list, to avoid further twists and turns. An effective investment incentive system to encourage recurring investment in the country. Fortunately, the government of Sri Lanka has shown determination to achieve its targets in economic growth while making further changes to suit the country's development. We're looking forward to seeing those such changes materialize, resulting in a win-win situation both to the countries and the investors. This slogan could be, someone will say it is quite Chinese, but I hope everyone knows this meanings. Empty talks endangers the nation. Practical work brings prosperity. This slogan originated from Circle 35 years ago and is now the rule of governance followed by Chinese government. I think I have talked too much this morning. Let's cherish all that we have now and do something really meaningful to the people and to the country. Thank you very much.
May I invite you, Dr. Xu, to make the next presentation.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. First of all, thanks CCC to invite me to be here. I'm Qu Jian, coming from China Development Institute. Also, we called CDI. It's great pleasure for me to be here and share with you about realizing the potential of the mega development project, Special Economic Zone. Special Economic Zone, also known as the SEZ, is one area where special economic control system and the policies are applied. The initial purpose of such zones is to create a favorable environment to attract investment and increase employment. My talk today will include 3 parts. The first part is an example of SEZ. I will compare the Shenzhen SEZ, Special Economic Zone, in 1980s and today. Pictures and the data will be used to show the significant changes brought by the mega development project SEZ. We will see how the SEZ dramatically promoted the economic growth and the social development. In the second part, I will introduce how SEZ seized a crucial opportunity and became one of the biggest winners. In the last part, I will show you how SEZ starts its construction and development, as well as how CDI supported this process. First of all, what happened in SEZ? Did they lose or win? Let's see the example of Shenzhen Special Economic Zone and its change in the past 30 years. The picture on the left shows Shenzhen SEZ in 1980s, 30 years ago. And the picture on the right shows the Shenzhen SEZ in today. This slide showed the change of the main road in Shenzhen SEZ. This slide showed the change of the commercial area. Now you look, 1980s commercial area. The right one is the today's commercial area. This is the Shenzhen Yantian port, one of the most important ports in the world, which was built since 1987. This is the Shenzhen Bay area. You look, how big change. This is the compared of the street view. From these pictures, we can see that Shenzhen was a small village in 1980s. And after developing as the SEZ for over 30 years, it is the top 3 city of China. There are more than 11 million people living in Shenzhen now, and nearly 7 million people working in here. This is the satellite photo of the Shenzhen taken in 1980s. Look, you will find at that time, most of the land was undeveloped. And next, you will find new satellite photo taken in 2015. And you will find 800 square kilometers had been developed. We can compare the Shenzhen SEZ with Hong Kong, for example. In 1980s, the economic scale of Hong Kong is 600 times more than Shenzhen. But Shenzhen catches up only after 30 years. And now, the economic scale of the 2 cities, Shenzhen and Hong Kong, are nearly the same. This year, Shenzhen's GDP is expected to exceed Hong Kong. According to the magazine Economist, Shenzhen SEZ is the most successful case among over 4,000 SEZs around the world. So, you may ask, why Shenzhen SEZ success developed so quickly? One key is that Shenzhen SEZ seized the opportunity of global manufacturing relocation. From our study, we found the global manufacturing were relocated from one region to another within every 20 years. Since the 1950s, the global manufacturing base has been relocated 3 times. In the 1950s, manufacturing base began to shift from the US and Europe to Japan. In the 1970s, the base removed again. We call the second round move from the Japan to 4 Asian tigers, namely Singapore, South Korea, Taiwan, and Hong Kong of China. The 1990s marked the beginning of the third round of the industry moved to the coastal area of the mainland China. At this time, Shenzhen SEZ seized these very big opportunities. According to our survey, one of the most restricting factors for the relocation of the foreigner capital is the poor instruction. Another is the lack of preferential or bonus system, coverage, tax, finance, land, import and export, service, and so on. And now, it's been another 20 years. The new round of industry relocation is happening. CDI, China Development Institute, conducts the survey every 5 years for follow these issues. We found that in 2007, the majority of relocated industries are labor-intensive industries. In 2012, capital-intensive and technology-intensive industries also joined industrial transfer. What fact caused the move? 10 years ago, 45 companies shifted their investment location, only to reducing the cost. After 5 years, more and more companies aim at expanding the market. 30 years ago, we found CDI for construction SEZ in China. Today, our CDI has played an active role in the development of special economic zone in global wide. More and more countries took SEZ as the tool to boost national economic growth. However, mega development project is very complex. Constructing SEZ requires high investment amount, long period of operation, reform of land system, and other social issues. There are many field cases around the world. Our CDI has experts and knowledge in SEZ planning. With rich domestic and international experiences, we found that the preliminary planning is essential, very necessary prior to the construction of the SEZ. It can be summarized as 1, 2, 3 SEZ model. Include 1 law, 2 plans, and 3 proposals. 1 law is the Special Economic Zone Act. 2 plans are SEZ industry planning and spatial planning. 3 proposals are proposal of SEZ investment feasibility study, proposal of SEZ financial, and the last proposal is the SEZ operation. 1, 2, 3 is very important model for set up SEZ. Countries in Africa, for example, Ethiopia, Congo, Asia, Europe, South America are developing SEZ now with the support of CDI and the 1, 2, 3 model. We hope to see SEZ can help Sri Lanka attract huge investment from global society. And we look forward a huge miracle of Sri Lanka and other Asian countries from the forefront of industrial relocation. Thank you very much.
Sanjay Belik, may I invite you?
Good morning, everyone. First of all, again, I would like to thank the Sri Lankan Chamber of Commerce and Industry for inviting me to participate in this very exciting session. I also would like to thank both my previous panelists for very interesting insights into mega projects. And I must also say that outside China, we have been also really awestruck by the kind of development that China has been able to bring about in its special economic zones and the other areas. I'm not going to make a presentation, so I'm just going to have a kind of one-on-one chat with you based on my experience in the government in the past. I used to be working with the government earlier. I work with the Tata Group now. So I'm going to share my insights about what I think about mega projects. I'm also not going to preach about what the government should do, what the people of the country should do. Essentially, it's a reflection of of what we try to do in India. And it's essentially for each of the countries and the people there to really decide on what future they would like to embark on. So it's not going to be something that I'm going to preach about. I'm essentially going to share my experiences. And those could be what you would like to do in Sri Lanka could be very different depending on the local context that you might be having. So why mega projects? I mean, we can get into the definition of what mega projects is, and I'll come back to that a little later. But why mega projects are really so exciting? Because I'm quite sure in Sri Lanka also, you're finding this space to be extremely exciting, that the massive projects happening, massive investments happening. There's a lot of excitement, there are a lot of concerns, and I'm sure probably some confusion as well. So how exactly all the emotions come about together in one mega project? And if there are several such mega projects happening, all of that is going to get compounded multiple times. So why mega projects? Should you really embrace upon these mega projects? Should you really welcome these projects? So there are some good reasons why, according to me, mega projects should really be welcome. The first would be that, of course, it makes a huge contribution to the economy. As we all know that projects of this kind typically create externalities which could be twice as much as your investment. So it gives rise to tremendous amount of economic activity in the country. So that's one big reason why mega projects should actually be welcome. Second, of course, is that it enhances the quality of life. It makes the individual incomes better. It enhances quality of life for the people. It helps the governments show that it's doing something, because governments are always concerned about what do people think about it. So mega projects are actually a physical symbol of what the governments are doing. So it really gives government a tremendous amount of boost in terms of what it is able to deliver to its people. And finally, most of the governments actually are short of capital. In fact, why governments, even private sector, is short of capital. So it helps you leverage and get you large investments from outside your own geographical boundaries. So that really is, if there are very small projects, that probably would not really excite very large investors. And these mega projects give you an opportunity of inviting very, very large entities to come and invest, which then supplements your ability to spend and thereby create infrastructure and opportunities for the people who live in the country. India has been embarking upon something called PPPs. We call it the public-private partnerships, in which there have been very large number of projects. So the total investment is almost about $120 billion of investment has happened from the private sector in these public-private partnerships. And some of you probably have seen some of these projects. They could be the development of the Mumbai airport, for example, and that's come from purely the private sector participation. The Delhi airport, if you've seen, it's been again built purely through private money. There are several other airports which are coming up. Some airports have already been developed. The Bangalore airport, Hyderabad airport, both these airports have been developed through private money. And what has happened is that in addition to that very large network of national highways has been the result of investment by the private sector. The ports have been developed, the metro rails have been developed. Every single conceivable piece of large mega project has been a contribution now of the private sector. But that's not really what it's not only the physical symbol of what the private sector has been able to create. There was the national highways earlier also. Now there are national highways which have been built by the private sector. But what now you experience is the quality of those national highways, because the private sector enterprise is a lot more, is a lot better. People feel when they travel on those roads, people feel that there's been a shift in the quality of that infrastructure. Second is the efficiency that is brought about by the private capital. And that's one of the major reasons why the governments actually encourage private capital to come in. Because what the private capital does is it brings about certain amount of efficiency in the way the projects are executed. So you know as much as I do that when you have capital committed, what you'd like to do is you'd like to get on with the project fast, you'd like to execute the project fast, and you'd like to start getting your returns as early as possible. And that sometimes does not necessarily happen in a typically government context. And I'm not being critical of the government, I was part of the government myself. And the government also has certain limitations in what it can do. But the private sector brings about a different perspective. It brings about technology, it brings about efficiency, and most importantly, there's an incentive for the private sector to deliver project faster, because the faster the project gets delivered, the faster you start getting the returns on your investment. And that helps the people in getting the benefits of that infrastructure or a mega project as early as possible. So what are the kind of, if these are the benefits, then why the governments actually are not in a position to get mega projects in their own geographies? And I'll now come to my specific experience of what we tried to do in Mumbai. Mumbai is one of the largest cities in India. It had infrastructure which is pretty weak. It has a lot of social challenges in terms of slums. There's an issue in terms of economic opportunities, jobs. So there were several of these of these challenges that were being faced by the city of Mumbai. And for us, what we tried to create was a mega project. And that mega project was not a particular project. That was not about the airport. That was not about the Trans-Harbour Link. That was not about a metro. What it talked about is how does Mumbai as a city transform itself? What is it that we need to do to see that the city transforms itself? So for us, the project was a city of Mumbai in a holistic manner and not specific infrastructure project that concerns the city of Mumbai. So how did we go about doing it? One of the things that we found was that anytime you create an infrastructure, large infrastructure or a mega project, it gets embroiled into some certain amount of controversy. And the reason why this controversy happens is that some people would start thinking that, is this project a sweet deal for somebody? Some private companies might say that, okay, you're putting far too much of risk on us. We'll not be in a position to make money. So there are a lot of concerns that happens about these mega projects. And the governments all over the world try to grapple about this. What would people think? Are we selling out? Are we really benefiting the people? So that's a concern most of the governments have. And in that context, these mega projects get created. And if that context is not set correctly, invariably, I find that these projects will start landing up in trouble. They start landing up in controversies. They start landing up in the courts. And the benefit of those infrastructure projects will not then accrue to the people of the country. So how did we go about in Mumbai? How did we start creating a vision for Mumbai? First of all, we said that infrastructure or a project is only one part of what Mumbai needs. So we, of course, had all the infrastructure projects that were required to be done. One was the airport that needed to be done. There was a sea link that was required to be done. The connectivity of the mainland to the island city had to be done. The sewage system had to be modernized. Water supply had to be. So there were a whole lot of infrastructure projects, very large infrastructure projects, had to be developed. But that was one part. The investment story was one part. We estimated that the total cost of that at that time, somewhere around 2003, the total estimated cost of that was $60 billion at that point of time. That's the kind of investment that is required. And the decision was taken within the government that wherever it is possible to get private sector investment, the government should not put its money. Because government has its own limitations. The local authorities have its own limitations on how much it can spend. So wherever it is possible, get the private sector to participate, and create a framework, an enabling framework, a transparent framework for the private sector to participate. So a significant part of whatever that investment was, that gets moved away from the balance sheet of the government and goes to the private sector. And the benefits of that, in terms of efficiency, in terms of modern technology, starts accruing to the city. So that was one part. So it was almost made into a rule that any bankable project, any project where private sector participation is possible, the government will not fund those projects. That's one part. Wherever there's a marginal possibility of such projects to be successful, the government will actually come in and make them successful by something called the viability gap funding. The government will put certain amount of money to enable the private sector to make those projects viable. So that was the second thing. And third aspect was where it is not possible for the government to invest, for the private sector to invest, the government will put its own capital. So that's one blueprint that got created for infrastructure projects. But infrastructure, as I said, is only a small part of the story. The other story, there's several issues that the city was facing. How do you handle the problem of slums? How do we get private sector to participate in slum redevelopment? How do you ensure that the jobs that could be stagnant in the city of Mumbai can actually grow? How do we see that the governance mechanisms get enhanced so that everybody, the judicial system, the laws, the regulations are made in such a manner it benefits not only the private sector, but helps the city to grow? I'll just give you a couple of small examples. FSI was almost a politically controversial issue in the city of Mumbai. FSI, I think you call it FAR out here, the floor area ratio. I know that Colombo has pretty high floor area ratios. But in the city of Mumbai, the FAR was only 1.33. That means if you have 1 acre of land, you can actually multiply that only in terms of development 1.33 times. And those were restrictions which were creating tremendous amount of load of population on the land. How do we change that? And politically, it was like it was something that no political party wanted to buy. But then the entire framework that got created was that this is something which I can say as my experience worked out there, it's something for you to consider if at all you find it useful, is that when we created this vision of infrastructure, of economic growth, of how do we enhance education, how do you provide better health care, how do you see that there's housing which becomes available for everybody, how do you see that the economic growth happens, how do you ensure that while you do all of this, the environment sustainability also is not undermined. So we created this overall plan. And this plan was then subjected to something called the Citizens Action Group. There was a large number of eminent citizens from the city of Mumbai, which were brought together in something called a Citizens Action Group. The plan was presented to them. They had their concerns on those plans, those were addressed. And on a regular basis, these Citizens Action Groups met, and the government updated the Citizens Action Group about what is happening in the city, not only on infrastructure, but also on various social projects. Similarly, we created something called the low-hanging fruits, which, if at all we can implement in a very short period of time, can actually tell people about the commitment of the government in making those things happen. I think as a result of that, we found that there has been significant amount of development that is now starting to happen in Mumbai. I'm not necessarily saying that it's been very smooth, but I can say that it's continued for several years. It will continue, I think, till the time the city actually gets transformed. And largely it's driven by the chambers like yours. A lot of the people who came and became part of the Citizens Action Group were leaders like you, who then participated not only in what is good for them, what is good for their industry, but they participated in what is good for their cities, what is good for their country. And that, I think, has made a big difference. That has enhanced the credibility of the plan. That has enhanced the credibility of the government. And that has actually created a very transparent mechanism of ensuring that we're able to deliver something to the people. I will just end a little bit about my company. I don't know if everybody is familiar with the Tata Group. Tata Group has now a total market valuation about $120 billion, pretty much. Almost about 3/4 of the revenues now come from outside India. So, but one of the key features of the Tata Group is that 67% of its 62% of its holding actually is by charitable trusts. The intention of the founders of the company was that whatever is taken as profits from the society has to go back to the society. So the profits actually don't necessarily come back as reinvestments into the company. Of course, some profits are retained for reinvestments, but the profits then go back to charitable institutions, and that goes into funding of cancer hospitals in areas where probably there's a shortage of water or certain other social causes which the governments probably are not able to fully do. So that's where the Tata Group comes in and does its bit in terms of supplementing the efforts of the government. Finally, even in creating these projects, I talked a little bit about how environment is so important. I think in our quest for very rapid development, we also have to be mindful of the fact that the benefits of whatever future wealth that you create not only has to sustain us, but all our children and their children and their children. So it has to be sustainable. How do you create a sustainable future for ourselves is as important. I'll end with a small story that when the Tata Group was creating a port on the eastern coast of India, in the state of Orissa, for months together, the port got held up because of something called the rare olive ridley turtle. And to save the local system out there, the local habitat of the olive ridley turtle. And I must say that it was actually a lot of activists which brought it to the notice of the Tata Group that this habitat is getting endangered. And there was a lot of investment that happened in this. A lot of time got lost because the port activity could not go forward. At the end of it, when there was a survey that was carried out, the population of the olive ridley turtles actually went up and not down. That's to us is sustainable future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sanjay. Now, may I invite Mr. Lakshman Jayasekara. He's a bureaucrat and somebody with a front seat on what's happening with the Western Region Megapolis. Over to you, sir, for some comments.
Thank you very much. And, first of all, let me thank the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce for giving a voice to the government sector. Listening to today's topic and the three presentation given by the eminent investor representatives, mega projects mean the projects not only invested in heavily, big sums of dollars, but also it should have a mega impact on the society. So the government would be looking at the projects in the sense of that aspect, whether there is an impact on the society, the people, their livelihood, and their income. And that is the way that we would approach the mega projects in Sri Lanka. We were listening to Mr. Hantian, who was representing the China Merchant Company. Now, I thought this is a very significant event in this podium also today. 3 years ago, I happened to have represented the government sector on the same forum on different subject, of course. At that time, it was more policymakers, the government bureaucracy who were in the podium. Today, I am sharing the podium with three the major investors to Sri Lankan mega projects. China Merchant, investing heavily into famous Hambantota area development, including the port, and Tata Group representative, my good friend Mr. Ganesh, Sanjay Ganesh, and of course the China Institute of Investment and Policy Making, all represented by the China government investment portfolio, which is becoming a major feature in the Sri Lankan investment scenario. So this podium itself is a representative of what is happening in Sri Lanka right now, the investor climate, and the commitment made by these, particularly by these two countries, are very representative. I would like to, however, take you through a couple of difficulties that the government is facing. Some of the projects that were presented by Mr. Dr. Keith Yan are more or less representing the greenfield development. The greenfield development is much more easier than developing the Western Region Megapolis. We are stuck with a lot of people, lot of garbage, lot of congestion, and we are being told to perform the miracle of the Asia and perform the next miracle of the country. Now that's a heavy challenge. I wish I had the same opportunity like the Dr. Jian. We are given greenfield development. I am asked to do the megapolis. I'll do that much faster, better. But fortunately or unfortunately, Sri Lankan bureaucracy, Sri Lankan investors are faced with a very difficult brownfield development. Brownfield is, just to share my thought with my good friend Sanjay again from Tata Group, they started the Slave Island development project. And that is Slave Island. A lot of people, a lot of controversy, a lot of conflict, but a lot of opportunities. And they took the task. We took the task at that time from the Urban Development Authority side. You'd have probably the Sri Lankan who are present here would witness how much great difficulties that we went through. But we are now getting it through. So the greenfield as against the brownfield is difficult. Now what does it bring to the government? Government has to be more accurate, more specific, very efficient. And they have to be, actually the operation has to be in a megapolis situation in Sri Lanka, very delicate. I would like to bring back Mr. Hantian theory of less talks and more action. And that he showed us a big board. I think it has to be a big slogan in Sri Lanka, less talks and more action. And that has to be accurate action and specific action and very efficient. I would leave you to judge whether the government and the private sector mean that, all that features. I think in the concluding remarks, it was mentioned the industrial relocation of the fourth kind. We are looking for this, particularly with the GSP coming up, whether we could really harness the benefit of the what is happening in Europe in relation to GSP plus to Sri Lanka, whether the megapolis can provide the industrial platform, particularly with the industrial estate, lands for the next generation of the industrial revolution. Government and the government officials generally take the comfort of the fact when it comes to the mega project, be it a port, be it a harbor, be it a road, to hide in the loans, the international loans given by the World Bank, ADB, JICA, and the Chinese government and various other governments. Now, Sri Lanka, unfortunately, has come to the end of the road so far as the loans are concerned. So we got to go for the PPP project which are initiated by the private sector. But that is a very difficult process. For example, to privatize our LRT system, we have been running round in circles how to get the investor for this one from the private sector. We had two options. We had the Japanese government coming and offering a loan. I was witnessing our colleagues in the government sector are jumping and taking the government loan. Whereas we could not fulfill the entire LRT network which covers the Western region by only a small segment of the loan. A small segment, by the way, is about $1.5 billion. $1.5 billion. To cover the entire system, it has to be about $5 billion. Now, the government simply cannot afford to take a loan for that. Therefore, we have to go to the private sector. But the government system is such that when it comes to the point of getting the mega projects, whether it is in the megapolis, in the Western region, or in Trinco, in the south, etc., the system has to be much more open-minded and much more innovative, much more specific, much more creative to get the private sector involved. There, I dare say that the Sri Lankan private sector hasn't been that much helpful. They are mostly not representing the investment enthusiasm in the mega projects. This is something that I want to play with you today, this morning. We will discuss this further. They come with not as the partners of the many foreign investors coming in, but they come as the simple agents, except perhaps the companies like John Keys who are taking on the challenge their own. So I urge Sri Lankan private sector to to be more proactive together in partnership with the foreign companies that are coming in. Dr. Kijian in his presentation again said, huge miracle is expected in Sri Lanka. I must say from the government side, we have put in place the plans, the programs and the action. We are not very happy about our own performance. We know that we are going through a very, very difficult procurement and various other difficulties and dealing with the general public, dealing with the masses, dealing with the support of the political arena. We are going through a difficult period, but we are ready in terms of the plan and some action, some legislation. So with that, may I just say the huge miracle in Sri Lanka is possible, but it's very challenging. So the forums like this must support the government in dealing with such situation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. May I invite you, Nadijan?
Thank you. From a private sector perspective, it's a very exciting time to be in Sri Lanka. We have a government which has articulated and conceptualized to some extent the development that it needs to take Sri Lanka to meet its vision as a regional knowledge-based hub that leverages its geographical location and uses its trade links with key markets. And it's been very, very consistent, the government, that it wants to do this development with private-public partnership and with foreign investment. I think many in this audience would be aware that John Keels is a very active and enthusiastic participant in Sri Lanka's economy. We've been responsible for some of the largest private sector investments in Sri Lanka, and many of which have been game changers in their own sectors. Our current project, Cinnamon Life, is probably the largest private sector investment happening right now, with an investment of over $850 million. We have in the past partnered with very large global international leaders in their own sectors, and we continue to be able to harness those partnerships. And in this current investment-rich climate, we're seeing a lot of interest in Sri Lanka from various parts of the world. So what do we, as a private sector, in this environment that is so rich and so rich in opportunity for investment, need? Chamindra asked me to spend a few minutes talking about our laws and our legal regime. The commercial laws in Sri Lanka are based on English law. They're very similar to those that exist in Singapore, for example. Our laws are quite robust. We have a new companies law from 2007, which is based, for example, on the best in Commonwealth systems. We have an investment promotion law which backs the BOI with a myriad of laws to give concessions for large-scale investments. And those laws have stood the test of time. They've worked well. So in terms of laws in general, we have a very robust system and quite robust institutions. What we do need is stability, transparency, and commitment. We look at the investments and development opportunities that have been identified, whether it is in Hambantota, whether it is in Trincomalee, the Western Megapolis, the expressways, even the industrial zones. But we need clarity as to what that is. What exactly is expected of the investor? What is the process to be followed? Bidding, as a private sector investor, bidding for an investment of this nature, bidding for mega developments, it's an expensive process. It requires feasibilities, it requires you need to retain experts, you need to retain lawyers, financial models. It can go into millions of dollars. So to make that commitment, whether it's in resources or in costs, we require transparency and certainty in terms of the process to be followed, the timelines that are set for evaluation, and transparency on that evaluation criteria. What investors don't want are stop-and-start projects, changing goalposts. So it's important that that transparency and certainty be brought in, and I think Mr. Hang went on to talk about that in his own presentation as 3 key elements that he also identified as being required from the government. And to do this, we need probably to enrich and empower our local institutions. The government institutions which are driving forth this vision for Sri Lanka. And in particular, in this current climate, we need alignment. We can't have different institutions pulling in different directions. We need institutions to pull together, whether from the conceptual change. I think Sanjay talked about the fact that when we're conceptualizing, we need to align all the relevant stakeholders so that we have one vision that we take into the future. If there is one particular law that we talk about that requires some change, we should probably look at our labor laws and our labor policy. In this current climate of quite a lot of construction, we're having a massive surfeit of labor construction workers. We need to look at how we liberalize our policy of bringing in temporary workers. And our labor laws themselves, our labor laws are for blue-collar workers. Our institutions look at our labor laws always through the lens of a blue-collar worker. If we want to bring forth our vision of a knowledge-based economy, we need to then, I think, provide in our laws for the requirements of a knowledge-based economy, for things like flexible working hours, for working part-time. Doing something like that will also unleash and enable a large proportion of our workforce, or I should say our educated people, to come into the workplace. In Sri Lanka, more than 50% of its graduates are women, but we don't see them in the formal workplace. If we need to bring our economy and to where we want it to be, we need all those educated people to make a contribution. Changing the laws in this nature, I think, would really bring more women out into the workplace as well. And we need to train our institutions to look at our labor laws not only through the lens of a blue-collar worker, but of industry as well. Thank you.
Thank you for that. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are already getting a bunch of questions. This is your opportunity. Please do submit your questions in. This is how we will take our questions. I will also remind you, the Chamber has requested that you take a few minutes to fill out that questionnaire that's on your tables. It's a survey of the findings of which will be presented this evening before the close of the session. Having said all this, I think there's an elephant in the room. Perhaps it's a dragon in the room. We're talking about the news today that there is a deal almost done on the Hambantota port. I discussed this with Mr. Hangten earlier, and I must say there are a number of questions about the vision for Hambantota. What can you tell us? What can you tell us, Mr. Hangten, about that long-term vision for Hambantota?
You want me to read the newspaper yesterday or today? Okay. So actually, I know that the people are focusing on the Hambantota project because it is, I'm sorry to say, I've been engaged with some confidential agreements with the government. But anyway, I should say the first one, yesterday's newspaper, and the news of today's newspaper are right. Yes, I appreciate the media that they are respond very positively, and that gives me a lot of confidence. China merchants a lot of confidence in developing this project. I wouldn't say I have a vision in Hambantota so far, because I will let you know after signing the agreement and the agreement effective date, after effective, if I can. But I would like to make example that why we invest in Colombo. Okay, so we are one of the bidder of 19 international bidder in 2009 when the Sri Lanka government tendered documents for CIC for Southern Terminals BOT project. So, but unfortunately, 2009, actually, the global financial crisis. So we are the only bidder were left at that time. A lot of people just concerned about the returns as a commercial project. But we did the right decision so far. We first one, we committed what we have committed. And the second one, we trust and believe our predictions in terms of the economic changes and the location that Sri Lanka have already had, and the manufacturing shift. So that's why we invest in Colombo. If we acted just like the other investors, we wouldn't harvest this project. I would tell you, CICT is not only the benchmark. Actually, we had make profit last year after his 1.5 years operations. I think that's why we invest. So regarding to the Hambantota port project, I think we do believe our global network and our expertise in port operations, and also this is not a port project. It is a kind of a transformation for the society. Especially, we would like to leverage on the port facilities to turn Hambantota as a logistics hub alongside the main shipping route. That is the vision I can tell so far. Thank you very much.
There's a question here, and I think this links up with a closing point that Nadija made also about the need for alignment of stakeholders from the very outset for large projects. And I'm putting this to anybody in the panel who would like to weigh in. I'm hoping, Mr. Jayasekara, you can also weigh in. It's about the Colombo International Financial City. Won't this create a conflict with the legal system applicable for the rest of the country if indeed the Colombo International Financial City will have separate laws that are applicable to it? I mean, if we are talking about aligning Sri Lankan investment, Sri Lankan businesses to what is already being constructed just a couple of kilometers from here, isn't it about time we started aligning?
Talking about the legal system here, I think anyway legal system has to change. If we have to accommodate the futuristic, innovative investment, currently what we have does not really support the foreign investment to come in, number one. To protect them, the protections are insufficient. And the taking over, the risk of government taking over due to the political pressures. Now all these things have to be taken out. So first of all, the existing legal system in the government in the land side has to change to get the investment coming in. Secondly, whether the port city new legislations that are being discussed currently are supportive of attracting the investment into that area. A real question would be whether that will be very competitive. It will be a threat to the investment in the land side. Now we have to talk about the land side investment and the seaside investment. Now, what is far more attractive to the investor incoming? This is little bit too early to give a judgment on that. But I can tell you one thing, that is, when the investor comes into the port city, government earlier, the government position was that is giving it away to the Chinese investor. Whereas the current concession agreement has built in JV, joint venture possibility between the government of Sri Lanka and the Chinese investor. Therefore, it opened up a platform for the Sri Lankan side to be the beneficiary of any potential legal system or the economic system that would built in to the port city. Now, the question is how far government is going to use it. Now, I have been taking part in some of the discussion that was taking place between the Chinese investor and the Megapolis ministry. I was urging that we must seize the opportunity that is being created by the investor in the seaside to benefit, bring in the benefit to the government and to the people and to the city side, the land side. Now, this is something that is novel, that is something new. We cannot pretend that we know all about how the threats and how the benefit could fall in place in time to come. So, this is something that actually the legal minds should address, as well as the financial minds, and the private sector must address this issue together with the government, and government is certainly in the middle right now. So, I don't want to pretend that there is a solution for this right now.
Can I also open this out to the rest of the panel? If we are talking about aligning Sri Lanka's private sector with these large development projects, isn't it about time some clarity be established about those available opportunities, the scope, the regulatory challenges, the legal systems available? Is there Chinese experience we can talk about? Is there, for instance, you talked about in Mumbai, Sanjay, what Tata has been involved in? You can start.
I think it's very important that the private sector knows what the rules of the games are, and no outside investor is going to take up large responsibility on their own, as I think was also mentioned by some of the other presenters, that they will have to depend on the local investors. And it's very important that they are comfortable, and it's on the back of their comfort that the foreign investment is going to come. So I think it's important that the local investors, the local business community knows that these are transparent processes, knows that there are remedies available in case something goes wrong, knows that there's a buy-in not only of the government, but also all the successive governments that are going to come in, which is not going to land up into a kind of conflict. They should not be in the crossfire subsequently. They should be in a position to take care of the local issues that might come up if there are issues of resettlement, because you talked about some of the brownfield developments. I'm sure there are going to be communities which are going to be affected adversely. How are they going to be compensated? So I think that's a broad rule of the rules of the game. But the most important thing that the private sector should be looking at, and I think they have to play a very active role in ensuring that, is a very transparent, level playing field. It's important that they get as much say in what's happening out here, and so that if they are confident, then I'm quite sure the foreign investor is going to be confident. So I think it's for people like us, the confidence of the local investors is paramount for even us to come in and participate here.
There's a connected question, and I'll just supplement what you're about to say with that. And this question is: there are very few transparent opportunities afforded to the private sector currently with regard to these mega developments. What is the experience in China? Is it not time to align everybody?
Actually, China's experience, because China merchants developed the circle, we are not only delegate a land, we are also delegate some authorities for governments administrations, some authorities. That is, we work with local government, then have the single window for every investors. If you say Sri Lanka is transforming into a regional hub, I thought the port is the best place, best platform for a logistics hub. So if you say a platform, China merchants, if he do the solo dancing, I don't think that would be a platform. A platform means that you can attract different players on the platform. So actually, a platform needs a lot of investors. We can be partnership, like an incubator, like China Merchants in Circle actually developed China Merchants, developed the biggest private insurance company, the best retail bank, and also if a different brand. I think if the government can set some consistent, transparent policy to those people can invest, no matter he is a foreign investor or private sector, they can invest in the region or in this kind of mega projects. I thought that will be very transparent. Especially, I thought a lot of private sector would think the big investment will have some tax incentives. But I would say in Circle, in China, actually all the private investors, they are attached with the China merchants' best incentives in tax and other administration compensations.
So investors had opportunity for a single window with China merchant essentially to invest there.
We did.
Yes. Was the legal framework in this industrial zone the same as that applied to the rest of the country?
That's it. That's what the lady said. Something you need to change the legislations. So actually, Circle industry zone, his level is similar to the city of Shenzhen. So we have our own authority to recruit any people we want. But 35 years ago, that's not possible in China. But this is kind of exceptions. But basically, under the big law, the constitutional law, and the regulatory umbrella of the country. So something needs to amend to suit the trends and the changes and the development of the area, if you want.
Perhaps a model for Hambantota.
I hope so. We will work with the Sri Lanka government. We will commit to what we have committed. Thank you.
Dr. Shu, a question for you. You talked about the fourth industrial relocation and potentially that Sri Lanka, I mean, we can assume that Sri Lanka has an opportunity here to be part of that fourth industrial relocation. However, it does strike us that we are a small country with a very small population, very different to potentially the situation in China when you had the East Coast first develop, and now that industrialization is spreading to the interior of China. How, if at all, from your experience working in the region and in Africa, do you think Sri Lanka can strategize around the lack of human resources?
I think this is a very good question. As everybody knows, there is a concept, globalization. But I think a lot of people don't know what is the globalization. Globalization means almost all the country will take part in the world supply chain. Big country do more work. Small country do small work. That means world supply chain can be divided into different links. Like American, like China, can do a lot of link of the whole chain. Small country can do one link. If you say, I'm small, I can't take part in this whole chain, that means you were losing. So from this point to see, Sri Lanka have a lot of advantage. For example, you have very good relation with all the big countries. That means you can cooperate with the big country to set up world international supply chains. This is very important. As I know, the population were limited. I think at least you can do two things. First, using the location to carry trade. I think everybody know this word, carrying trade. And you also can use limited population and low wage to processing trade. Two trade include processing trade plus carrying trade. This is the one way for Shenzhen to success. So I think it's better, also best way maybe for you. Of course, to set up SEZ, take part in whole world supply chain, need a lot of work to do. Just I told you, 1, 2, 3 model. At the beginning, you must make SEZ law. As I know, I go to a lot of countries. The government officer said to me, we need set up SEZ. Then I ask you, what's the SEZ law? You can give me to show. They are very surprised. They have no law. And I'm very surprised. You have no law, and you decided to set up a SEZ. And then I asked them, show the spatial planning, industry planning. They don't know what I say. That means if you want your SEZ to go to success, please, according to my opinion, do 1, 2, 3 framework. Don't forget it. Thank you.
There's a question for Nadija and also Sanjay. How can we manage delays in mega projects which upset ROI of investors? Cinnamon Life and Tata and the Tata projects here are behind schedule. That is what it says here, and hence this question to get your perspectives on this.
How do we manage? Sorry, I didn't understand.
How do we manage delays?
Any construction project has built into it, under international norms, processes for handling delays. And I think anyone who's been involved in any of the large construction projects, whether it's in the port, whether it's on highways, are used to it. There's provision for it. And It's in the normal course of the construction trade. I don't think it's something hugely unusual. I don't know.
Do you want to weigh in, Sanjay? Is there something in the broader framework that can improve?
No, I think just to answer, I think learn from the Chinese. I think that could be one. So, but I think the clear thing is that when before you start your executing, I think you get everything in place. So very often, I think in the quest to start a project, for whatever compulsions there could be, we're probably not connecting all the dots. It could be the financing part, it could be the resettlement part, it could be getting the proper type on the technology part. I think, so these are areas I think needs to be tied up first before you actually start. So planning has to precede execution. If you start execution first and then plan simultaneously, you're almost certainly likely to land up in trouble.
Also, question for the two local panelists, if I may. This is addressed to Lakshman Jayasekara. It's difficult for companies to invest due to lack of transparency, corruption, and bureaucracy. What improvement do you plan to do to boost confidence of local investors? And I'm trying to link back to what Dr. Xu was saying about that 1, 2, 3 plan. You know, how ready are we? How many components of that plan, in your estimation, are in place as far as mega projects are concerned?
If I may, I think I'm going to respectfully disagree with Mr. Jayasekara to say that our laws are very robust. We've had a lot of investments that's come in already that are of a mega nature, and they have withstood the test of time. We do have robust laws. What we require now is transparency and alignment. In terms of the projects that are being identified for development and available for private sector participation, what does that project involve? What is expected of that investor? Clear clarity on that. And to get that alignment of all the stakeholders, so whether it is your trade unions, whether it is your labor force, whether it is the society around you, alignment, because there is some obscurity as to what these mega projects are. And very importantly, transparency of the process. How exactly do you go about this? And what are the timelines? What are the timelines for evaluation? What are the timelines and what are the criteria for evaluation? If that is there, I think we have a very robust framework that can take this forward.
Mr. Jayasekara, any comments? Do you agree? If you take that model that Dr. Xu identifies of the legal process and then leading to other steps, do we have this in place as far as mega projects are concerned? Your estimation, your view?
No, Nadija, what I mentioned was in respect of the port city. Here is a tremendous opportunity, in my view, for us to create some laws to get new room, new podium, new platform for the investors who walk into Sri Lanka without all the harangue of going through some 22 odd approvals that are generally outlaid in the current, for example, building approval or the project approval process. In Sri Lanka, you have to take 22 type of different approvals. Can we get out of that kind of scenario in the port city? In the port city, when we bring in the laws, I'm not sure whether the current legal system is robotic enough to give the speed that the investor needs. For example, if you get entangled into any legal dispute in Sri Lanka, the God should save you. Because it will go on and on and on, argument and debates and the lawyers showing all their colors in the courthouse, but the poor investor or the poor party litigant has absolutely no remedy for their real problem. That's why the government brought in what is called arbitration. This is to cut short the any dispute that may arise in the commercial law. But whether the arbitration has done this their role, I don't know. So I still stand my ground with all due respect to my lady lawyer representing the John Keels, that legal system has to be more robust, more expeditious solution has to happen. This is true in the case of civil law, criminal law, and the commercial law in Sri Lanka. This has to change. And if the lawyers do not agree on that, at least the politician has to go address this issue. I stand on that particular thing. I know that some of the lands that are held by the UDA are being, when you want to get the land back from an investor who is non-performing, he can keep the land and he can go on litigating the UDA and the government for ages. So the investment is suffering. So this has to be addressed. So that's why I think the port city gives an opportunity, a new opportunity for us to create new laws that are very, very attractive in the places like Hong Kong and Singapore and Malaysia, where the investor climate was very much helped by the legal system. Now, the question that I think you are going to really ask is whether the investors, the government system can be more transparent, efficient, and all that. 3 words that you mentioned. That's not easy, you know. It's not that easy to make a transparent judgment on a contract or a tender in the new system. Because earlier it is what is called unsolicited proposal. The proposal comes, 3 guys sit here and evaluate, and the award is very clear. The person who made the proposal is going to get the award, right? That is how it was. And let's not kid ourselves saying now it is not so. Now what happens is there are 10 proposals, and the 3 guys sitting here on this side of the government has to make a judgment, and any judgment you make is going to be challenged. It will be challenged in the media, it will be challenged by the politician, and it will be challenged legally as well. Now we got to get the bureaucracy again harnessed towards addressing this particular issue of the transparency in a transparent manner. So I don't know how fast we are going to do. The decision on the Hambantota, how it affected. Decision on the port city, how did that get delayed? And so many decisions are now going to be made on the many mega projects within next few months. How the government sector would perform and how the private sector would perform. I'm waiting to see, will you accept in the private sector or the foreign investor the decision melted out by the government? Definitely there will be challenges. So government system is right now in a kind of dilemma. What decision is the right decision? What decision is the transparent decision? And what is transparent for one person is very non-transparent for the other person. So we are stuck right now, particularly on the PPP sector. Our system is still in the formation. So with that.
Right, thank you. It's not the most optimistic note to conclude something on, but we are out of time. However, I would like to thank the panel for weighing in on such a vast issue. Thank you very much, Nadija and gentlemen. It's been a great discussion. I think soon enough lunch will start. I think there is you are expected back here at 1:30, and the chamber would, there are some gifts from the chamber.